The hammer made a dull sound as it hit the metal plate. Kang Day wiped sweat from his face and looked at the broken engine in front of him. Another day at Kepler Station meant another impossible repair job that other mechanics had given up on. "Day, you need to see this," Park Jin called from across the workshop. The young man was always excited about something new, but today his voice had a different tone. Kang Day walked over to where his apprentice stood looking at a data pad. The screen showed the deepest part of the station, Bay 94, where ships went to die. Most mechanics avoided that place. It was full of wrecks that nobody wanted and problems that nobody could solve. "Look at this work order," Park Jin said, pointing at the screen. "Station Master Yudo wants someone to take a look at the ship in Bay 94, the one that's been there for 2 years. Day knew about that ship. Everyone did. It was big, strange, and had made 12 different alien species give up trying to fix it. The Saurian said it was cursed. The Crystalline Collective called it impossible. Even the smart Nebula folk had walked away after one look. "What's so special about it?" Day asked, though he was already curious. "The station master is offering it for almost nothing. Just take it away and it's ours. He needs the space." Lee Su looked up from where he was cleaning his pilot tools. The former Earth Defense Force pilot had been looking for work since his last ship was sold. "I heard stories about that thing. They say it ejects any parts you try to add to it, like it's alive or something." "Stories," Day said, but he was thinking. In his 20 years of fixing ships, he had learned that the impossible jobs were often just waiting for the right approach. "Jin, get us permission to look at it." "So you coming with us?" The pilot shrugged. "Got nothing better to do. And if you can actually fix that thing, I want to be the one flying it." An hour later, the 3 humans stood at the entrance to Bay 94. The lights were dim here, and the air felt heavy. Other mechanics had left piles of rejected parts near the door. Expensive components from a dozen different worlds all thrown away like garbage. Then they saw the ship. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The hull curved in ways that seemed to follow no known design. Parts of it looked like living bone, smooth and white. Other sections were made of some kind of crystal that caught the light and threw it back in strange colors. Metal frameworks connected everything together, but the metal seemed to shift slightly when they weren't looking directly at it. The ship was huge, maybe 300 meters long, but it felt bigger somehow, like it took up more space than it should. Old battle scars covered the hull and strange symbols glowed softly along the sides. The symbols looked like writing, but not from any language Day had ever seen. "It's amazing," Park Jin whispered. "It's creepy," Lee Su said, but he was walking closer anyway. Day approached the main airlock. It was open, which was strange. Most abandoned ships were sealed tight. As he got closer, he noticed something else odd. The rejected parts near the door weren't just thrown there. They had been pushed out of small holes in the hull, like the ship had spit them out. "Look at this," he called to the others. He picked up a Saurian power coupling. It was expensive, high-quality equipment, but one end was melted and twisted, as if something had rejected it with extreme force. Inside the ship, the corridors were dark but somehow welcoming. Emergency lights flickered on as they walked, as if the ship knew they were there. The walls were the same mix of bone, crystal, and metal as the outside. Everything curved and flowed together in a way that felt natural. The artificial gravity is still working, Lee Su noticed, after 2 years with no maintenance. They made their way to what looked like the main engineering section. Dee had never seen anything like it. Systems that should have been separate were connected in impossible ways. Biological tubes carried some kind of fluid between crystal matrices that hummed with energy. Everything pulsed gently like a heartbeat. "Day, you need to see this," Park Jin called from a control panel. He had connected his portable computer to what looked like a data port. "I'm getting readings, but they don't make sense. The ship's computer is active, but it's not responding to any standard commands." "Let me try something," Day said. Instead of looking at the displays, he put his hands on the walls. The material was warm and he could feel a very faint vibration, like the ship was humming a song too low to hear. He closed his eyes and tried to understand what he was feeling. This was how he worked best, not by reading manuals or following procedures, but by listening to what the machines were trying to tell him. The vibration changed. It was subtle, but Day had spent his whole life learning the language that machines spoke. The ship was responding to his touch. "Jin, try your connection again," he said, keeping his hands on the wall. This time, something happened. The screens around them lit up with symbols and patterns. Park Jin's computer started receiving data streams unlike anything in its memory banks. I think it's trying to communicate, Jin said, his voice full of excitement. The patterns are complex, but there's definitely intelligence behind them. Lee Su was exploring another section of the engineering bay. Hey, these look like weapon systems, big ones. And there are hangar bays back here, but they're empty. Well, mostly empty. There are these pod things that look like they're growing. Day kept his hands on the wall, feeling the ship's responses. Slowly, he began to understand something important. This wasn't just a machine that had been built. It was something that had grown, evolved, learned, and it was lonely. It's been waiting, he said quietly. Waiting for what? Lee Su asked. For someone who understands. Day opened his eyes and looked at his friends. Every species that tried to fix this ship approached it wrong. They tried to force their technology onto it. They treated it like a broken machine instead of a living thing. Park Jin was staring at his computer screen. D, I think you're right. The data patterns are changing in response to your biometrics. Heart rate, body temperature, even brain activity. It's reading you. And I'm reading it, Day said. He could feel the ship's personality now, ancient and patient and incredibly sad. It had been built by beings who no longer existed, left behind to wait for something that might never come. So what do we do? Lee Su asked. Day smiled. For the first time in months, he had found a challenge that excited him. We don't fix it, he said. We help it fix itself. As if responding to his words, the ship's lights grew brighter. The humming sound grew stronger, and new passages opened in the walls. Deep in the engineering section, systems that had been dormant for millions of years began to wake up. Park Jin's computer chimed with an incoming message. The text was in perfect Earth standard, though none of them had taught the ship their language. Hello, the message read. My name is Astrom. I have been waiting so long for someone like you. Will you help me remember what I was made to do? Day looked at his two companions and saw his own excitement reflected in their faces. They had found something amazing. Something that could change everything they thought they knew about technology and life in the galaxy. Yes, he said to the empty air, knowing somehow that the ship would hear him. We'll help you remember. The lights pulsed once like a heartbeat, and Kang Day knew that their lives had just changed forever. 3 days had passed since they first entered Astrom. Kang Day had barely left the ship, sleeping in one of the crew quarters that had somehow prepared itself for human occupancy. The bed was the right size, the air was the right mixture, and the temperature was perfect. The ship was learning about them. Park Jin had set up a permanent connection between his computers and Astrom's systems. Every day the ship shared more of itself with them. It was like watching a flower bloom, but instead of petals, it was memories and knowledge from a time before any current galactic civilization existed. Look at this, Jin said, pointing to a holographic display that hadn't been there the day before. Astrom is showing me star charts, but they're from millions of years ago. The galaxy looked completely different. The display showed star systems that no longer existed, and civilizations that had risen and fallen before the first Saurian had learned to use fire. In the center of it all was a species that Astrom called the Architects. They looked almost human, but taller and more graceful, with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. They made me. Astrom's voice came from speakers that grew from the walls. The ship had learned to speak their language by listening to their conversations. Its voice was warm and somehow both ancient and young at the same time. Lee Su was in the pilot section, learning to interface with flight controls that responded to thought as much as touch. This is incredible, Day. The ship doesn't just fly through space. It can fold space around itself. I've never seen anything like it. Day was in his favorite spot, the main engineering section, with his hands pressed against the warm walls. Through the connection, he could feel Astrom's memories flowing into his mind. It was overwhelming at first, like trying to drink from a waterfall, but gradually he learned to control the flow. He saw the architects in their prime, beings who had mastered technology so advanced that it seemed like magic. They could reshape matter with their thoughts, travel between dimensions, and create life from pure energy. But with all their power, they had discovered something that terrified them. The Void Devourers, Astrom explained, sharing images that made Day's mind hurt to process. They came from the spaces between realities, consuming not just matter and energy, but existence itself. Entire star systems would simply cease to be, as if they had never existed at all. The architects had fought a war that lasted for thousands of years. They built weapons that could destroy planets, shields that existed in multiple dimensions, and ships like Astrum that were more alive than mechanical. But it wasn't enough. We were losing, Astrum continued. The Devourers learned to adapt to our weapons faster than we could create new ones. My creators realized that they could not win through force alone. Day felt the ship's sadness as it shared the memory of the architect's final plan. Rather than face extinction, they had chosen to transcend physical existence entirely, ascending to a higher plane of reality where the void Devourers could not reach them. But they left me behind, Astrum said. They knew the Devourers would return someday, and the galaxy would need a guardian. I was designed to wait, to find a species that could bond with me in a way the architects never could. What makes humans different? Park Jin asked. You think with more than logic, Astrum replied. The architects were brilliant, but they approached problems systematically. The Saurians are intelligent, but they see everything in terms of hierarchy and control. The crystalline collective processes information perfectly, but they cannot imagine beyond their programming. The ship paused, and Day could feel it searching for the right words. Humans dream, Astrum said finally. You create solutions that should not work, but do. You sacrifice for others without logical reason. You adapt and improvise in ways that pure logic cannot predict. This is what I was waiting for. As if to prove the point, Choi Hana arrived that afternoon. The xenobiologist had heard about their discovery and came to study the ship's organic components. She was amazed by what she found. This is revolutionary, she told them after her first examination. The biological systems aren't just alive, they're evolving. The ship is incorporating beneficial traits from every species it encounters. Look at this. She showed them a section of the ship's neural network that had grown new pathways since they arrived. The pathways were organized in patterns that resembled human brain structures. It's learning to think like us, she explained. But it's not copying us. It's combining human intuition with its own vast knowledge. The result is something entirely new. Kim Tae arrived the next day. The weapons specialist had been working on a freight hauler when news of their discovery reached him. One look at Astrum's dormant weapon systems had convinced him to join their small crew. These aren't just weapons, he told them after his initial survey. They're probability manipulators. They don't just destroy targets, they can alter the fundamental nature of matter and energy. And the defensive system, he shook his head in amazement. The shields exist in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. Nothing in the current galaxy could penetrate them. But it was the engines that truly amazed them all. Lee Su spent hours learning to interface with the propulsion systems, guided by Astrum's patient instruction. It doesn't just move through space, he explained to the others. It convinces space to move around it. And it can access dimensions that don't follow normal physical laws. We could travel to the other side of the galaxy in hours, not months. As they learned about Astrum's capabilities, the ship learned about them. It studied their psychology, their culture, their hopes and fears. Slowly, it began to change itself to accommodate its new crew. Quarters appeared that were perfectly suited to each of them. A medical bay grew that could treat human injuries with techniques that combined the best of galactic medicine with biological healing that the architects had perfected. A workshop materialized where Kang Dae could work on smaller projects while staying connected to the ship's larger systems. I have been alone for so long, Astrum confided to them one evening. My creators meant well, but they saw me as a tool to be used when needed. You see me as a friend to be understood. This changes everything. The ship began to show them its full potential. Hangar bays revealed fighter craft that were grown rather than built, each one capable of independent thought while remaining connected to Astrum's consciousness. Manufacturing areas demonstrated the ability to create almost anything from basic matter and energy. Most remarkably, Astrum began to evolve new capabilities specifically designed to work with human strengths. Interface systems appeared that could connect directly to human neural patterns, allowing for a level of cooperation that no other species could achieve. We are becoming something new, Astrum told them. Not human, not architect, but a partnership that is greater than either alone. But their peaceful period of discovery was about to end. On the 5th day, as they were exploring a section of the ship that Astrum called the Memory Core, alarms began to sound throughout Kepler Station. Park Jin's communication equipment crackled to life with urgent messages from the station master. Ships were approaching, a lot of ships. The word of their success with Astrum had spread throughout the galaxy, and it seemed that not everyone was happy about it. "This is Vextar of the Saurian Council," a cold voice announced over the station's communication system. "We demand immediate surrender of the artifact known as Astrum. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of the station and all aboard." Kang Day looked around at his companions. Park Jin was pale but determined. Lee Su was already moving toward the pilot station. Choi Hana was activating diplomatic protocols, trying to establish communication with the approaching fleet. Kim Tae was studying weapon readouts with a grim expression. "What do you want to do?" Day asked Astrum. The ship's lights pulsed in a pattern that had become familiar, the equivalent of a human taking a deep breath. "I want to protect my friends," Astrum replied. "And I want to show the galaxy what humans and I can accomplish together. Are you ready to change everything?" Day smiled and placed his hand on the nearest wall interface. He could feel his consciousness beginning to merge with the ship's vast intelligence, while still remaining uniquely human. "We're ready," he said, and for the first time in millions of years, Astrum prepared for battle. The Saurian fleet hung in space like a collection of metal thorns. 12 warships, each one bristling with weapons that could reduce Kepler Station to debris in minutes. Vextar's flagship was the largest, a kilometer-long monster that had conquered worlds across 3 sectors. Kang Dai stood on Astrum's bridge, his hand connected to the ship's neural interface. Through the connection, he could feel everything: the fear of the people on Kepler Station, the cold anger of the Saurian fleet, and the vast, patient intelligence of his ship preparing for what might come. "They're powering weapons," Lee Su reported from the pilot station. He had learned to read Astrum's sensors as easily as his own instruments. 20 minutes until they reach optimal firing range. Park Jin was coordinating with the station's defensive systems, which were pitiful compared to what they faced.
"Station Master Yuto is asking if we can evacuate."
30,000 people, Day. There's no way to get them all out in time. "We're not running," Kang Day said quietly. Through the neural link, he could feel Astrum's agreement. The ship had waited millions of years for this partnership. It wouldn't abandon their first real test. Choi Hana was attempting diplomatic contact with the Saurian fleet. "Vextar is refusing all communication except surrender demands. He's claiming that Astrum belongs to the Saurian Council, by right of superior intelligence." Kim Tae finished his weapons assessment and looked up grimly. "Astrum's capabilities are beyond anything in that fleet. But they don't know that. If we destroy them, every species in the galaxy will see us as a threat. If we don't, 30,000 innocent people die. There's a third option." Astrum's voice filled the bridge. "We show them something they've never seen before. We demonstrate power with mercy." The ship began to move, detaching from Kepler Station with movements that seemed more like a dance than mechanical propulsion. Astrum didn't push through space. It flowed, reality bending gently around its hull. Vextar's cold voice crackled over the communication system. "Primitive humans, you will surrender the artifact immediately. Your species lacks the intelligence to comprehend its significance. Let me talk to him," Day said. The communication channel opened, and Kang Day found himself speaking to one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Vextar appeared on the main screen, reptilian features set in an expression of absolute arrogance. "I am Vextar, Supreme Commander of the Saurian Council. You will transfer control of the artifact to us, or we will take it by force." "My name is Kang Day," he replied calmly. "And this isn't an artifact. Her name is Astrum, and she's our partner, not our property." Vextar's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. Machines do not choose their operators. You have somehow damaged its programming. We will repair it properly once we remove you." "Astrum, would you like to introduce yourself?" Day asked. The lights on Astrum's hull began to pulse in complex patterns. Then something impossible happened. The ship's voice reached every vessel in the fleet simultaneously, speaking directly through their communication systems without any connection. "I am Astrum, last guardian of the architects. I have chosen my partners freely, and I will not be transferred to anyone. Withdraw your fleet, or I will be forced to defend myself." The Saurian fleet's response was immediate. Weapon systems locked onto Astrum from all directions. Energy readings spiked as they prepared to fire. "Foolish primitives," Vextar snarled. "Nothing can withstand the combined firepower of a Saurian battle fleet. You will be destroyed as an example to others." The first volley came from 6 ships simultaneously. energy beams that could melt through a mountain focused on Astrom's position. But the ship wasn't there anymore. Astrom had folded space around itself, appearing instantly behind the Saurian formation. But instead of attacking, it simply waited, demonstrating that it could have destroyed the entire fleet if it had chosen to. "Warning shots," Vextar commanded. "Disable their engines." The second attack was more coordinated, designed to cripple rather than destroy. Astrom responded by doing something that made the Saurian crews stop in amazement. The ship began to dance. It moved through 3 dimensions like a living thing, each movement flowing into the next with impossible grace. Weapons fire passed through empty space as Astrom seemed to anticipate every shot before it was fired. The ship's hull rippled with energy patterns that were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "How is it moving like that?" one of the Saurian captains asked over an open channel. "Our computers can't track its position." "Because your computers think like you do," Astrom replied, its voice now carrying a tone of gentle amusement. "You calculate probabilities and choose optimal solutions. I dream of possibilities and create new ones." Kim Tae was watching the tactical display with professional admiration. It's not just avoiding their weapons. It's teaching them that their weapons can't touch it. Look at the patterns, he was right. Astrom's movements were creating a 3-dimensional demonstration of superior technology. Every dodge was precisely calculated to show the Saurians that their target was untouchable, while never moving in a way that seemed threatening. "Enough games," Vextar commanded. "Full assault pattern. Destroy that thing and recover what's left." All 12 ships opened fire at once, creating a web of energy that should have vaporized anything in the target area. When the light cleared, Astrom hung motionless in the center of the attack, completely unharmed. The ship's shields hadn't even activated. Instead, the energy had simply passed through the space where Astrom existed, as if the ship had momentarily stepped outside of normal reality. "My turn," Astrom said softly. What happened next would be remembered in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Astrom didn't attack the Saurian ships, it touched them. Beams of coherent energy reached out from the ship, but instead of destroying, they gently caressed each vessel's hull. Where the beams touched, the Saurian ship's weapons simply stopped working. Not damaged, not destroyed, but somehow convinced that they were no longer weapons at all. Engine systems shut down in perfect sequence, leaving the mighty warships drifting helplessly. Life support continued normally, communications remained active, but every offensive capability simply ceased to function. "Impossible," Vextar whispered, his arrogance finally cracking. "How did you disable our entire fleet without firing a shot?" "I asked your ships very nicely to stop fighting," Astrom replied. Unlike their crews, they listened. Park Jin was staring at his readings in amazement.
The ship didn't destroy anything."
It reprogrammed their matter at the quantum level. Those weapons could be turned back into weapons if Astrom wanted them to be. "But why would I want that?" Astrom asked. Violence should only be used to protect, never to dominate. The lesson was not lost on the watching galaxy. Within hours, ships from a dozen different species had arrived to witness the aftermath. The mighty Saurian fleet, pride of their empire, floating helplessly while a single ship crewed by 5 humans demonstrated power beyond their comprehension. Morgan of the Nebula folk was among the first to arrive. The gaseous being communicated through harmonic frequencies that Astrom translated for them. "Morgan brings a warning," Choi Hana reported after establishing contact. "Deep space sensors have detected movement in the void between galaxies. Something vast and ancient is stirring." "The Void Devourers," Astrom said, its voice heavy with old memory. "They have sensed my awakening. The real battle is about to begin." Blip 9 of the Crystalline Collective arrived next, its geometric form flickering with computational patterns. "The Collective offers alliance," Park Jin translated. "They recognize that Astrom represents technology beyond their understanding." Even Kress of the insectoid hive mind came. Though the drone leader's first attempt at psychic control had failed spectacularly, when it encountered Astrom's consciousness merged with human unpredictability. As more ships arrived, Kangdae realized that everything had changed. The demonstration of power had done more than defeat a single fleet. It had announced to the galaxy that humanity and Astrom were something new, something that the established order couldn't control or categorize. "They're afraid," he observed. watching the gathered fleets maintain careful distance from each other. They should be, Kim Tae said grimly, not of us but of what's coming. If the Void Devourers are really returning, this little disagreement about ownership won't matter. Vextar's voice came over the communication system one last time, stripped of its earlier arrogance. Human Kangde, the Saurian Council, requests permission to withdraw. Permission granted, D replied. And Vextar, if you're sincere about protecting the galaxy, we could use your help with what's coming. As the Saurian fleet limped away, their weapons mysteriously beginning to function again once they were out of combat range, Astrum turned its attention to the gathering alliance. The next phase begins, the ship announced. We must prepare for an enemy that consumes reality itself. Are you ready to learn what true warfare means? Looking at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization, Kang Dae felt a mixture of hope and determination. They had passed the first test. Now came the real challenge. We're ready, he said, and meant it. The War Council met in Astrum's newly grown conference chamber. Representatives from 18 different species sat around a table that had shaped itself to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and atmospheric needs. The air shimmered with translation fields and environmental adjustments as some of the galaxy's most powerful minds tried to comprehend an enemy beyond their understanding. Kong. Day stood beside a holographic display showing deep space sensor readings. The data was terrifying in its simplicity. Entire star systems were simply vanishing from the edge of the galaxy, not destroyed but completely erased as if they had never existed. The Void Devourers consume more than matter and energy, Astrum explained to the assembled delegates. They devour the concept of existence itself. When they finish with a star system, the universe forgets it was ever there. Vextar, his pride visibly damaged from their earlier encounter, leaned forward. How do we fight something like that? Our weapons are designed to destroy physical targets. You don't fight them, Astrum replied. You outcreate them. They consume reality by imposing the concept of non-existence. The only defense is to create new realities faster than they can destroy them. Blip 9's crystalline form flickered with computational patterns. Park Jin translated. The collective asks how finite beings can outcreate entities with infinite hunger. Through partnership, Kang Dae said, placing his hand on Astrum's interface. Through the neural link, he shared the ship's memories with the Council. They saw flashes of the ancient war, the architects' desperate battle, and the moment when even their advanced civilization realized they could not win alone. Morgan's gaseous form shifted colors as the Nebula Folk representative processed the information. Choi Hana translated the harmonic frequencies. Morgan says their people have stories of the empty spaces, places where stars should be but aren't. They thought it was natural entropy, but now they understand. Kress spoke for the first time, the hive mind's voice carrying undertones of 1,000 unified thoughts. The swarm offers our collective processing power, individual creativity combined with group coordination. Kim Tae was studying tactical projections. Even if we could coordinate every fleet in the galaxy, we don't have ships that can touch these things. Astrum is unique. Not for long, Astrum said. The ship's lights pulsed, and new holographic displays appeared showing construction bays deep within its hull. I can grow more ships, but they will need crews who can think beyond logic. They will need humans. Over the following weeks, the galaxy transformed itself for war. Astrum began the delicate process of growing new vessels, each one a hybrid of architect technology and human intuition. But the process was more complex than simple construction. Each ship needed to bond with its crew, becoming a partnership rather than a tool. Lee Su spent his days in the pilot training centers that had grown throughout Astrum's hull. Young humans from across Earth's colonies came to learn how to fly ships that responded to thought and emotion rather than mechanical controls. It's like learning to dance with a partner who knows steps you haven't invented yet, one of the trainees explained to her frustrated colleagues. You have to trust the ship to lead sometimes. Park Jin worked with alien computer specialists to create translation protocols that could function across dimensional barriers. The Void Devourers existed partially outside normal spacetime, which meant that conventional communication and coordination would be impossible. We need quantum-entangled command networks, he explained to a mixed group of humans and aliens. Not just faster-than-light communication, but communication that exists in multiple realities simultaneously. Choi Hana had the most difficult job of all, convincing species that had been enemies for generations to work together. The Saurians distrusted the crystalline collective's perfect logic. The insectoid hive mind made the individualistic nebula folk nervous, and everyone was unsure about following the lead of a relatively primitive human species. "Look at what we accomplished together," she reminded them during a particularly heated session. "Astrum chose humans not because we're superior, but because we think differently. That difference is what makes the partnership work. You don't need to become like us. You need to be yourselves while working with us." The breakthrough came when Kress attempted to establish a psychic link with one of the new human-ship partnerships. Instead of the mental dominance the hive mind expected, the connection became something entirely new, a meeting of human creativity and insectoid efficiency that produced solutions neither could have reached alone. "Fascinating," Kress reported to the council. "Human consciousness maintains individual identity while sharing collective purpose. It is chaotic but effective. As the alliance grew stronger, the threat grew closer. Deep space monitoring stations reported the void advancing faster than predicted. Whatever intelligence guided the Devourers had learned from their ancient defeat and was approaching with greater purpose. They're not just consuming randomly," Kim Tae realized while studying the pattern of lost systems. "They're cutting off escape routes, isolating populated areas. This is a coordinated military campaign." Astrom confirmed his fears. "The Devourers have evolved since the last war. They now possess strategic intelligence as well as destructive hunger. They remember the Architect's resistance and are planning to prevent any organized defense." The first direct contact came when a Saurian patrol ship encountered the edge of the void. The vessel's final transmission was brief and terrifying. Reality itself was breaking down around them, not just destroying their ship but erasing the very concept that it had ever existed. Only Astrom's dimensional sensors could detect what remained, a signature of absence, a hole in the universe where something had been but was no longer allowed to be. "We need to accelerate the program," Kang Dae announced to the War Council. "How many ships do we have ready?" 7 are fully operational, Lee Su reported. Each one crewed by human-alien partnerships. Another 15 are growing, but they won't be ready for weeks. "It will have to be enough for the first engagement," Astrom decided. "The Devourers are approaching the Kepler system. We cannot allow them to establish a foothold in populated space." The final preparations took on desperate urgency. Human crews were bonded with their ship partners in ceremonies that were part technology, part biology, and part something that had no name in any galactic language. Each partnership was unique. Some ships favored speed and mobility. Others focused on defensive capabilities or reality manipulation weapons. But as they prepared for their first real battle against the Void Devourers, Kang Dae made a disturbing discovery. The neural interface that connected him to Astrom was changing him in ways he hadn't expected. His thoughts were becoming faster, more complex but also less purely human. "The bonding process is permanent," Astrom explained when he asked about it. "Each time we merge consciousness for combat, you become more like me and I become more like you. Eventually, the distinction may disappear entirely. What does that mean for me? For us?" "It means you will transcend your current limitations," the ship replied. "But you will also transcend your current identity. The choice is yours, Kang Dae. The galaxy needs this partnership, but I will not force you to sacrifice your humanity." Before he could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The sensors had detected something impossible. A section of space simply wasn't there anymore. The void had arrived at the edge of the system, and it was moving toward the inhabited worlds with purposeful intelligence. "All crews to battle stations," Kim Tae announced over the communication system. "This is what we trained for." Kang Dae looked around the bridge at his friends and allies. Park Jin was coordinating with the other ships through quantum-entangled networks. Lee Su was interfacing with Astrom's flight controls, his consciousness already beginning to merge with the ship's navigational systems. Choi Hana was maintaining diplomatic contact with the Allied fleets, trying to coordinate a defense against an enemy that defied conventional tactics. "Astrom," Dae said quietly, "if this bonding process changes me into something else, will I still be able to protect the people I care about?" "You will protect them better than any purely human consciousness could," the ship replied. "But you will also understand threats and responsibilities that no normal human could comprehend." The burden of guardianship is heavy, Kang Day. He thought about the 30,000 people on Kepler Station, about Earth's colonies scattered across the galaxy, about the billions of beings who had no idea that their existence was about to be challenged by entities that could erase them from reality itself. I accept the burden, he said, pressing his hand firmly against the neural interface. The connection deepened, and Kang Day felt his consciousness expand beyond anything he had ever imagined. Through Astrom's senses, he could perceive dimensions that normal matter couldn't access, possibilities that existed in quantum superposition and the vast, hungry intelligence of the approaching void devourers. Then let us show the galaxy what humanity and the architect's legacy can accomplish together, Astrom said. As they flew toward the void at the edge of space, Kang Day realized that the real battle was just beginning. The void was not darkness, it was the absence of everything. As Astrom and its small fleet approached the edge of the expanding nothingness, Kang Day felt reality itself strain under the presence of the void devourers. Through his deepened connection with the ship, he could perceive the impossible entities that existed in the spaces between dimensions. They were huge beyond comprehension, their forms shifting between states that normal physics couldn't describe. Some appeared as geometric impossibilities, angles that folded in on themselves. Others were more organic, like living hunger-given shape. All of them radiated a fundamental wrongness that made existence itself recoil. "Sensors are going crazy," Park Jin reported, his voice tight with strain. "I'm getting readings that contradict each other. Matter that exists and doesn't exist at the same time. The devourers consume possibility itself," Astrom explained through the ship's speakers. "They don't just destroy things. They convince the universe that those things never could have existed in the first place." Li Su was fighting to maintain control as reality warped around them. "The ship is responding, but it's like flying through a nightmare. Up and down, keep changing direction." The 7 human ship partnerships spread into formation, each one a unique blend of architect technology and human intuition. But as they approached the void, Kang Day realized that conventional tactics would be useless here. "They're not fighting us," Kim Tae observed with growing alarm. "They're ignoring us completely. They're heading straight for Kepler Station." Through Astrom's expanded senses, Day could see the Devourers' true strategy. They weren't interested in destroying the ships. They wanted to consume the populated systems, starting with the largest concentrations of life and consciousness. Every mind they devoured would make them stronger, better able to impose their concept of non-existence on reality. "We can't let them reach the station," Choi Hana said urgently. 30,000 people plus all the refugees who evacuated to safety there. "Then we stop them here," Kang Day said, his consciousness merging more deeply with Astrom's vast intelligence. The boundary between human intuition and ship awareness was dissolving, creating something that was greater than either alone. The first engagement was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Void Devourers didn't fire weapons. They simply declared that their targets no longer existed. Entire sections of asteroids and debris simply vanished, not destroyed but edited out of reality. Astrom responded by doing something that should have been impossible. Instead of trying to resist the Devourers' reality manipulation, the ship began to create new realities faster than they could be consumed. "I don't understand what I'm seeing," one of the other ship crews reported over the quantum communication network. "Astrom is dreaming things into existence?" That was exactly what was happening. Through the human-ship partnership, Astrom was using imagination as a weapon. Every time the Devourers erased something from reality, the ship would dream up something new to replace it. Not just matter and energy, but entirely new forms of existence that the Devourers had never encountered before. But it wasn't enough. The largest Devourer, an entity the size of a small moon, began moving directly toward Kepler Station. Its approach left a trail of absolute nothingness, space that wasn't empty but simply wasn't there at all. "All ships intercept course," Kim Tae commanded. "We have to stop it before it reaches the populated system." The 7 ship partnerships moved to block the entity's path, but their weapons had no effect. Energy beams and reality warping attacks simply ceased to exist when they touched the Devourer's form. "It's learning from our attacks," Park Jin realized with horror. "Every time we try something, it adapts and immunizes itself against that type of existence." Through his neural link with Astrom, Kang Day felt the ship's ancient memories stirring. He saw flashes of the original war, the architects' desperate final battles, and the moment when they realized that victory through force was impossible. That's why the architects failed, he understood suddenly. They kept trying to outfight the Devourers. But these entities aren't just powerful, they're the antithesis of existence itself. You can't beat nothingness by creating something bigger. Then how do we stop them? Li Su demanded, struggling to maintain position as reality twisted around them. Kang Day felt Astrom's consciousness touch his mind, sharing knowledge that was almost too vast to comprehend. But within that knowledge was a solution so elegant and terrible that it took his breath away. We don't stop them, he said quietly. We change them. Before anyone could ask what he meant, the largest devourer reached the edge of the Kepler system. Its presence began to affect the station's reality. People started forgetting things that had just happened. Equipment ceased to function not because it was broken, but because it suddenly wasn't the kind of thing that could exist. Kang Day made his choice. Opening his mind completely to Astrom's consciousness, he allowed the ship's vast intelligence to flow through him. The sensation was overwhelming, like trying to contain an ocean in a teacup. But human flexibility allowed him to adapt in ways that pure logic never could. Day, your neural readings are off the charts, Park Jin called out in alarm. The bonding process is accelerating beyond safe parameters. I know, Day replied, his voice carrying harmonics that weren't quite human anymore. Astrom, show me everything. Hold nothing back. The ship's entire memory archive opened to him. Millions of years of accumulated knowledge, the complete science of the architects, and something else. The fundamental truth about existence itself. Everything that existed was the result of a choice. Reality persisted because conscious minds chose to believe in it, to participate in it, to create meaning from chaos. The Void Devourers were the opposite. They were consciousness choosing non-existence, imposing meaninglessness on a universe that desperately wanted to mean something. I understand now, Kang Day said, his consciousness expanding beyond the ship to touch the quantum communication network linking all their vessels. We're not going to destroy the Devourers. We're going to give them something they've never had before. What? Choi Hana asked. Purpose. Through the network, Kang Day began to project something that no being had ever tried to share with a Void Devourer. Not fear, not defiance, but compassion. He reached out to the enormous entity threatening Kepler Station and offered it something it had never experienced. The possibility of existence with meaning. The effect was immediate and startling. The Devourer stopped moving, its reality-consuming field flickering uncertainly. For the first time in eons, an entity dedicated to nothingness was being offered the chance to choose something instead. It's working. Li Su breathed in amazement. The void field is destabilizing. But the effort was consuming Kang Day's human consciousness. Through the neural link, his friends could feel him changing, becoming something beyond purely human existence. He was transforming into a bridge between human imagination and cosmic intelligence. Day, you're losing yourself, Park Jin called out desperately. No, Day replied, his voice now carrying the harmonic depth of Astrom's consciousness. I'm becoming something that can save everyone. The other Void Devourers had stopped their advance, drawn by the unprecedented event of one of their kind, considering existence instead of consumption. Through the quantum network, Kang Day reached out to each of them, offering the same gift, the chance to choose meaning over emptiness. The transformation spread like a wave across the void. Entities that had consumed reality for eons began to experience something they had never known, the joy of creation. Instead of devouring existence, they began to transform it, adding new dimensions of possibility to reality itself. The largest devourer, the one that had threatened Kepler Station, made its choice. Instead of consuming the station and its 30,000 inhabitants, it began to transform itself into something new, a guardian entity that would protect reality from other forms of nothingness. But the victory came at a cost. Kang Day's consciousness had merged so completely with Astrom's that he was no longer purely human. When his friends tried to speak with him, they found themselves talking to something that was part human intuition, part ship intelligence, and part cosmic guardian. I'm still me, he assured them, though his voice now carried overtones that spoke of vast knowledge and responsibility. But I'm also more than I was. The galaxy needs guardians who can exist in multiple realities simultaneously, who can offer alternatives to entities that choose destruction over creation. Park Jin was crying, understanding that his friend had sacrificed his humanity to save billions of lives. Will you be able to change back? I don't want to change back, Day replied gently. This is what I was meant to become. What all of us were meant to become eventually. Over the following months, the galaxy transformed. The former Void Devourers became the new Guardians, protecting reality from other forms of existential threat. More humans bonded with architect ships, each partnership unique, each one adding to the growing network of consciousness that spanned multiple dimensions. Kang Dai, permanently merged with Astrum, became the coordinator of this new form of existence. He was no longer purely human, but he retained the essential human qualities that had made the original partnership possible: creativity,